One down, some to go. Today we're talking about what I would do to change the Barbarian, how I would redesign the class, what changes I would make, what new focus I would create for this traditional Dungeons and Dragons class. This one is going to be different than the rest in the series, on account of I actually have redesigned the Barbarian. The Sabrock Barbarian, which I will link in the description, pretty much exemplifies how I would go about changing the Barbarian. I'll give you an outline. Yeah. Tastes like chicken. You've got doubling the hit points. Not quite doubling, actually, because you only double the hit points that you get from level 2 onward. Level 1 hit points are still the same, 12 plus con modifier. But after that, it's the usual D12 plus con modifier or 7 plus con modifier. But whatever you do is doubled from level 2 onward. I feel like the Barbarian having tons and tons of hit points, like just a ridiculous number of hit points compared to everyone else, is evocative of the fantasy of the Barbarian. The Barbarian does not shrug off hits. They take it. And they just keep on going. They don't deflect hits, is a better way of putting it, because they do shrug it off. They're like, oh, 20 damage? That's nothing to me. But they don't go, oh, you miss. They go, you hit. I don't care. So that's number one. Number two is a rage power system. So I don't really like, it's not even that I don't like, the rage system in 5e and 3e, because they are pretty close to the same thing, where is this like state that the Barbarian is either in or they are not in. If they're in it, all their class features turn on, they get a bunch of bonuses. Consequently, if they are not in rage, they don't get those bonuses. Now, this creates one of two problems, depending on how you go about it. Either you have enough rage to always be in rage for the entire adventuring day, in which case, what's the point of having it be a different state than normal? Or two, you don't have enough rage to last you for the entire day, at which point, what are you doing? Like, you basically don't have class features other than reckless attack that you can use outside of rage. So you are just a really bad fighter. Right? And that's why the Barbarian is considered very weak, is because in a long adventuring day, which is usually what people recommend, like, oh, your casters are too powerful, run longer adventuring days so they run out of spell slots. Well, guess what, my friend? The Barbarian runs out of rages way faster because they basically use one per fight. So if there are more fights in the day than the Barbarian has rages, they're spending at least some of those fights not being a Barbarian. They're just a character with no class features. So either one of those two problems can happen, and they can both happen in the same campaign because different days could have different numbers of encounters. So instead of having it be a state that you enter and creating this, damned if you do, damned if you don't paradox, not a paradox, damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, I instead have rage be a resource that you generate and then you spend on abilities. So the class has a series of rage powers of different levels and doing different things, costing different amounts of rage. You have a limited amount of rage that you can spend on any given power. So it starts at 1 and it goes up to, I want to say 6 or 7. I think 7 at the top. So like, a lot of rage powers will have a base cost. In fact, that's how I phrase it. It's not the cost of the power, it is the base cost, which you have to spend that much rage to use the power. And then most powers have additional effects if you want to spend more rage. So as you level up, lower level powers remain kind of useful, usually not as good as higher level powers, but you can still spend more rage to get a bigger effect. So what do rage powers do? They can do lots of different things. They can just straight up boost your damage. You can spend it when you take a hit to reduce the damage that you take, so that you still get hit. It's important to me conceptually that the Barbarian not be difficult to hurt. It should be very easy to hurt, very hard to hurt meaningfully. So damage reduction is a feature that the Barbarian gets. And why did I double the hit points, by the way, instead of giving resistance like the base Barbarian does? So the Barbarian can still benefit from resistance elsewhere. Now they have double the hit points, and situationally, from whatever it is that's giving them resistance, they might also take half damage. So you can double dip into that. The PHB Barbarian gets resistance, which means that no other resistance effects help at all, which I find to be kind of limiting. This is a class that lives in melee range. The most dangerous place to be in 5th edition. In most parties. Not most parties. That would be grossly overstating the case. In high optimization parties where the campaign difficulty is quite high, and you're dealing with like casters, who are equipped to deal with high difficulty campaigns, being in melee voluntarily is suicide. It's just a terrible place to be. You'll die instantly. Because monsters are nearly always as good or better in melee than they are at range, if they're able to operate at range at all. So staying out of melee is the conventional wisdom for how to survive. My intent was to create a class that can go into melee and not just survive, but thrive there. Because how do you generate rage? You generate rage by hitting with weapon attacks and taking damage. If you take damage, you build up rage. So those monsters are coming up and they're like, 5 damage. You're like, cool. Well, I've got like 80 hit points, so that 5 damage I don't really care about, but I did get a point of rage, which I can now use to kill you even harder. That's the kind of gameplay that this class is meant to evoke. So those are the two main things, doubling the hit points, and also, I think I have it in the rage power section. You can't use a rage power if you are wearing metal armor. That is traditionally a metallic armor restriction is relegated to the druid for, I think, largely unstated reasons. It's really vague, like why druids have that restriction. In this case, it is purely because it's not purely. There are two reasons. The evocative, the imagery of the barbarian is not wearing heavy armor. Like, you're not walking around in like metal manufactured armor. You're going to be wearing like hide and skins and leather, the sort of lighter armor, if you're wearing any armor at all. And I think, I don't remember if I did an unarmored thing for this barbarian. Maybe I did. I don't remember. But anyways, the point being that the second reason why I restricted against metal armor is because the highest medium armor is almost as good as like plate mail. If you have your +2 dexterity, so you max out the dex bonus, and you're wearing like half plate, you're only 1 AC short of wearing the heaviest armor in the game. And I don't want this barbarian to have high AC. Low AC is its weakness. It's able to capitalize on being hit. There's a bird over there. It's really distracting me. Being hit is something it can capitalize on. It can generate resources from being hit, and so it doesn't care as much as other classes would. But if things go south and you start running out of hit points, because you do have to lose hit points to gain rage, you start running out of hit points at some point, you can't turn your AC on. You can't just choose to stop being hit. You kind of have to extract yourself from the situation. So that is an intentional drawback of the class. It is a weakness that I have designed into it. It is a weakness you are, to some extent, able to mitigate, but is a weakness nonetheless. And it's something you kind of always have to keep you keep your eye on. So, very low AC, very high hit points, and rage powers. Now, rage powers are impossible to balance against spells because rage is not a daily resource like spell slots are. It doesn't come back on a rest at all. No, it does. It does. You reset to a certain point, which I think is like equal to your rage cap, the amount of rage you can spend on one power. You get that when you finish a long rest. So you kind of start the day a little bit angry. I think we've all kind of been there. So, rage powers are not directly comparable to spells, but when I was building this class, I was kind of trying to gear it towards Originally, I was trying to gear it towards like, what if a wizard was just really bad? What if a wizard player was just like choosing bad spells and not playing, like, not really trying that hard? That was the standard that I was going for. And I did not reach that standard. I'm very certain that I fell short of that. Now, I would put this closer to like maybe just above Warlock in terms of overall effectiveness. And that's only largely because like you aren't limited to rest-based resources. You can literally just keep, like, your entire adventuring day can be compressed into a single encounter, and you're probably going to be about as well off, other than, not being able to spend hit dice and such. So that is how I would redesign the Barbarian. You want to be easy to hurt, but hard to hurt in a way that matters. You want to have incentive for the Barbarian to just wade into melee. You aren't just able to take a hit, you want to take a hit. You are generating resources from taking damage, and you're able to take those resources and turn it around and do your class's special thing. That's the idea. This, as compared to the Player's Handbook Barbarian, where you kind of still need to play really carefully and conserve your resources and be really stingy with them, because you don't have a lot. The Barbarian, I played a Barbarian for about a year ago, and so I have some pretty strong feelings about the way that the Barbarian plays out. I think that it is not nearly durable enough to survive even moderate difficulty play. Because like 5th edition is a pretty easy game in general. Like you can get by with nearly any kind of character concept. You can make it to the end of the campaign. But are you going to be useful? Are you going to be contributing to your party? The changes that I made, the way that I redesigned the Barbarian from the ground up, I think is an important step towards making sure that a Barbarian character can meaningfully contribute to a party of casters in a moderate to high difficulty game. Is it as good as a caster? No, absolutely not. You're not going to compete with like a primary sorcerer, wizard, druid, cleric. These classes are always going to outshine my Barbarian, and that I'm fine with that, to be honest. Those classes are overtuned. So when I show people this Barbarian and they're like, well, that's clearly overpowered. That's ridiculously strong. Look at it compared to the bad Barbarian that you're replacing or the other F-tier classes, aka the Marshals. Like, why would anyone play any of those? I'm like, I don't know why anyone would play any of those, like, regardless of whether or not this class is on the table. You don't need me to tell you why those classes are bad, except maybe you probably do, if that is the reaction to seeing this class. But anyways, yeah, the Barbarian, I have a much clearer picture about how to redesign the Barbarian than I am going to have about these other classes, specifically because I've just already done it. So this is my one pointy hat moment where I give you some homebrew in addition to my thoughts on a problem and the solution. So enjoy that. Next time, there will be no pointy hat moment because we're doing the Bard, which I do have some very good ideas for. I just haven't written them down.